Hey everyone, we have a very special episode of Still Untitled for you this week, and it's brought to you by Ops Genie because incidents happen, and thankfully, Ops Genie empowers devs and ops teams to plan for service disruptions and stay in control during incidents. It also gives teams the power to respond quickly and efficiently to unplanned issues, and helps notify all the right people through a smart combination of scheduling and escalation paths. With Ops Genie, your next incident doesn't stand a chance. Visit opsgenie.com to sign up to get a free company account and add up to 5 team members. Again, that's opsgenie.com. Never miss a critical alert again with Ops Genie. Now on with the show.
Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Adam.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Melissa.
Mark Dubois and Melissa Eng, welcome to the podcast. You guys are both friends of mine. I'd like to introduce you to the tested audience. Mark is an incredible production designer, art director, also a fellow prop nut job like me.
That is true.
We've worked on a lot of similar projects together, and Melissa is an armor maker extraordinaire, self-taught mold maker, breaking incredible ground, as Mark and I have discovered, getting to know your work over the past year. And welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the cave.
Thank you. It's
Thanks
amazing. It looks amazing.
Now, we just finished filming a tested video where you brought some of your incredible armor wear, some gauntlets that you've been working on. And the thing that I find most amazing about the work that you're doing is you have some significant restrictions.
Yes.
In terms of space and materials and time.
Yes, a lot of restrictions, actually. So you saw a little bit at the Maker Fair. It's my Lumecluster office is nested in my other company, which is a music center.
Right.
Not really similar.
Yes.
A lot of elderly, a lot of children running about, a lot of people with confused looks, walking by two or three rooms, but they're very small rooms.
Very small rooms.
Very
and
small
you're
rooms.
like dressed in a corporate blouse. And
Like kind of like this.
Yeah, looking
maybe
like
a blazer.
Yeah.
Like the other day. And I'll always wear like dress shoes because any moment I would have to walk out and speak to a customer or a parent or a student or just, a friend of the company. We're also all carpeted.
So you have to do all this shop work and casting and mold making it, right?
Yeah, I
'Cause
mean,
it's not messy at all,
I
right?
showed you our shop at Tippett Studio, and it's like I was afraid of you bumping into something and completely messing up, because you dress all in black.
And we're back. We just had to do a little bit of a mic shift there, but go ahead. You said you were showing Melissa Tippett Studios.
Yeah,
Mark works for Phil Tippett.
Yeah. So when we went into the shop, it was like I was showing her around, and obviously it's a massive. We have a massive shop, but it's like it's a very heavily used shop. Like Phil is always in there and whatnot, and there's like dust all over the place. But we don't really have to worry about kids coming in or people getting dirty or anything like that, because I mean that's what it's there for. I can't imagine having to have a space like yours where you have to keep it spick and span with all the plastic and everything you're swinging around in there.
And you're like, is it always this clean? And I have to try because any moment, someone could walk by. I don't want to have to explain what's going on because those are two completely different type of companies. I don't want them to get confused.
Yeah,
But
I
that
really-
carpet.
I so appreciate this because it's like look, everybody at the beginning of their careers has space and space restrictions, and often I've asked fans or people who follow me on Twitter to tweet their small workspaces because I've worked in 90 square feet at times, and I've also had 2,000 square feet, and under these extreme restrictions, you're still producing the most amazing work of such a high caliber. And I mean, you were telling me in New York, you're like, is this how people do it? I haven't met other people that do this. And I'm like, you're actually breaking ground that people haven't even thought of.
I was like, oh.
In terms of 3D printing jacket molds.
It makes me feel wasteful. When I look, I'm like, oh, wow, how many millimeters of silicone? Because we usually have like this. If you're going to make, a jacketed mold, matrix mold, or whatever it is, you want to have, like a quarter inch here, an inch
Half
there,
inch, yeah.
If
you were going to cast this, you'd literally make it in a block of rubber, 2 inches wide and 7 inches tall.
We have no space size restriction, in most cases, we have to buy a ton of material anyway, so it's falling out of the trees. Use as much as you need, and but you don't do that. You can't.
No, I mean for me, making the 3D printed jacket supports for all the gauntlet pieces was, one, saving money, two, I don't like mold making. And
It is a very specific gene
Oh
pool.
my
yeah,
God.
I don't like. You keep talking about finding the zen. I
It's
have
a
not
total
found it
zen.
yet.
For me, making molds is zen. I don't. It's like you just shut everything off, and then it's just about like hitting all those same marks over and over.
But so
again.
to give the audience a little idea, when Chronicle released the incredible casting of Kane, the robot villain from RoboCop 2, Mark DeBow here cast up all 230 some odd separate pieces of Kane.
It was about 270 molds. And the thing is that fortunately there was a team. I was like, in all fairness, I was like project lead, and Sam Tippett worked on it, and we had like Damon Bard came in for Ed 209. We actually did that one, but it was one of those things where I really relished doing it, because it was like, in my day job, my day life, like I'm an art director and I go from desk to desk and I have to make decisions. On this one, the part makes the decisions. You just have to find it. You're looking at it and you're orienting it in a way, because a lot of it was like gravity feed molds. So I find a lot of zen in that.
Yeah, yeah.
But you don't find zen in
Well, that's one little aspect. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, I can't always attend to it because I might need to step out and attend to customers or teachers, because I also, look after the teachers along with my sisters who run the company. I can't necessarily be spending time making molds or doing certain things because my time has to be focused elsewhere.
Right.
So a lot of it was about saving time, money, and just, being able to do more of what I would rather be spending my time doing, which is designing. But a lot of it is also, I had to cut out a lot of options. Like I can't ever think of fiberglassing or doing anything like that.
Right.
Or some of the support jackets that I saw you make, which are, amazing, but I can't even consider it, not at this point, this stage of Lumecluster.
Because of the space restrictions.
Space, the carpet. It's not just like a roll-on carpet. It's part of the office.
Yeah.
The walls, the paint, the fumes. I can't do that. Pouring silicone, then I use dragon skin. That one seemed okay, to work with. But
It's a fairly low impact in terms of the smell.
why I only print in PLA on my TAS 6. The Form 2 printer, I use a variety of their resins, but that one's, they can be, the door can be closed there. I don't have to worry about children or other people poking their heads in. You saw my main area, which is a small room with some of the armor and masks, again, displayed away from people so they don't touch it. So everything I have to do, every choice I make has to be decided based on, not getting in the way of other business.
And you started fairly recently with all of this. You had never modeled anything in 3D or 3D printed anything, 4 years ago?
Yeah, I started it in 2014. I learned how to 3D. I told you the really quick story. Should I just mention it?
Please tell it.
So in 2013, my first Maker Faire, I think, maybe second, was it September or October was Maker Faire?
I think it's October.
October, September, whatever. But in 2013, I went to a Maker Faire, and I went there kind of as like a last resort of wanting to find something, because, I desperately always wanted to be an artist, but I always pushed it out of my life because societal pressure said, art, starving artist, it's a terrible, terrible idea.
It's a bad decision to make.
It's
for
a
your
bad
future.
life choice.
What have we done?
Yeah.
What have we done?
So I thought, no, this can't be it. And it's funny because, I've mentioned that my family has a lot of artists, but I still was convinced, I'm not gonna be that. I just believed everybody else, my peers, I guess. But 2013, we had already been doing our other company, our music center, but I thought, things are going well here. I might as well try to give myself a shot, try it out, but I'm going to give myself 3 months because I don't want to waste time and money because, I can't. Even though my sisters and I run this company, it's still a lot of energy. It's a lot of work still. I can't waste my time on something Or their time. Yeah. And that's the worst thing. I would hate that. So it turns out there was a competition, and I thought, okay, I'll use this as some motivation. And I thought, well, I like masks. I think other people like masks, and I'll make this really intricate mask. How do I do it? And I saw these 3D printing people. They're like, oh, you should try this. I'm like, great. What is that? And I was at this booth in Maker Faire, and they're like, it's 3D printing. And I'm like, that's so cool. Where do I start? They said, use Blender. So I've been using Blender since then. I guess I picked out what I thought would help me achieve the designs I wanted to create. It was really brutal, though. I didn't sleep for like a lot of the 3 months that I was trying to finish the piece for the competition that I had to submit for in January 2014. And once I submitted it, I happened to win it. And it was my first 3D print. I sent it to a company called Shapeways because there was company competition like Shapeways and Adobe. And I won that competition. It went up into like little gallery thing in New York. So that was all like a very new experience because I never really pursued art so much. I did it privately.
Yeah.
Right.
I did a lot of experimentation since I was a kid. Yeah, like painting, ink drawing, laser cutting, if I could fiddle with it in like a Brooklyn makerspace. I did digital painting. I tried all sorts of things, but I gave up so easily because I got bored and I thought, I can't be an artist if I don't stick to it.
Yeah.
So you kind of walked in and like essentially you said, "What's that over there?" "That's a baseball bat." "What do you do with it?" "You hit a ball." "Okay. Here, throw the ball to me." "Home run." That's not supposed to happen, but it did.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, you set. It sounds like what you're saying is you set yourself tasks, and then you also looked realistically at the amount of effort that would be required to fulfill that task to the best of your ability, and then sought to implement exactly that much energy.
That is a really nice way of putting it.
Yeah. But one of the things that I'm noticing is like the more that I get to know you and we talk about your process or whatever it is, you're not hindered by the voices that you usually hear going into an industry like this. This is how you do it. That's how you do it. You're kind of finding, for lack of a better term, revolutionary ways of doing this stuff at home that suits the way that you want to do things, that I think that like even I'm looking at it going like, yeah, you know what? Like sometimes somebody coming in with a fresh approach can actually come up with, like that's where things actually change from, like.
I mean, and to give you an idea, the type of mold jacket printing that you're doing, I was just at Weta Workshop in New Zealand just a couple of days ago, and they are currently... They're using all sorts of different types of 3D printing technologies. They're constantly finding new ways for it to streamline their design, iteration, and production process. And they're right now looking at printed molds. I mean, this is what you're doing is actually groundbreaking. And you are braving some really interesting territory. And, if you got yourself to New Zealand or you were able to sit down with Richard Taylor and talk to him about how they're implementing these processes, you guys would find a ton of crossover in the ways in which what you're looking through the technology in the ways that it can serve you that nobody else is really thinking about yet, or just a few people are starting to imagine.
And I think it's funny I appreciate hearing that from both of you, but it's interesting because when I was doing it, I just thought, how can I make this easier so I don't spend much money?
Well, in Duke Ellington's biography, he says at one point, well, when he's like in his early 20s, and he said a friend called him up and said, "Could you write the music for a musical I'm doing on Broadway?" And this is like the 1920s or something like that. And he said, "I didn't know you couldn't write a musical in a week, so I did."
And that's funny. We had something like that when we were working on Kane. When they molded Kane, the Gatling gun on it.
Gatling gun.
Yeah, the Gatling gun on it was a one-piece block mold that was jeweler cut out, and I was like, I picked it. We still actually had a lot of the original molds,
which is like 25 years old at this point.
Yeah, but we couldn't cast out of them, and I'm kind of looking at it, going like, wait a minute, it's like five barrels, and there's like a central core and everything like that. And I was like, who made this mold? And Blair Clark, who was there, who's like probably one of the best armature makers ever, he looked at it and he looked at me with this, and he has a little bit of a devilish grin. And he was like, well, Craig Hayes did that. And I'm like, I didn't, you're not supposed to be able to do this. And he's like, nobody told him he couldn't.
Right.
And so because he was sitting there trying to figure out, like he just figured it out in his head and then just did it. And then afterwards, everybody's like, oh, this is crazy. You shouldn't be able to do that.
Right.
But because nobody's telling you, you shouldn't be able to do that. Like when you told me you only had like a couple of millimeters of silicone, I would have told somebody that's not enough.
Nope.
But
I would too.
What's the normal amount?
Oh, I would have done for what I saw you pulling out. I probably would have gone with at least a 1/4 inch.
Yeah, like 6 to 10 millimeters.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mine's between 5 to 10, depending.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so it was just one of those like, oh, okay, yeah, because it's like we're all afraid of it failing, so we go beyond what we really need.
Yeah.
But you look like you want to make sure that you don't go beyond, you just do the right amount.
And the efficiency is incredible.
Before we continue with this week's episode, I want to let you know that this week's episode of Still Untitled is also brought to you by LinkedIn. The right hire can make a huge impact on your business. Trust us. I've worked in offices of all sizes, and whether it's big or small, having the right hire can make a huge impact on your workplace, your day-to-day, and your bottom line. But finding the right person can be hard. Instead of just posting on a job board, which most people don't even check, post your job to a place where people go to every day to make connections, grow in their career, and discover job opportunities. That's LinkedIn. Most LinkedIn members haven't recently visited the top job boards, but 9 out of 10 members are open to new opportunities. 70% of the U.S. workforce is on LinkedIn, so it's the best place to get your job opportunity in front of people who are qualified for your role and ready for something new. That's why a new hire is made every 10 seconds using LinkedIn. Hurry up to linkedin.com/untitled and get $50 off your first job post. Again, that's linkedin.com/untitled to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. Now back to the conversation.
I also really love the fact that you're looking at the armor, you're taking your passion for it, and you're fully giving into the idea of it as just something that you want to wear and want to be able to wear. And so you're looking at them as fashion items. And I think that's a really bold and awesome thing as an avid cosplayer and someone who, like all three of us, realizes that everything we wear is a form of costume. The idea that you're looking to take that design aesthetic and work it into something and convince people to wear fancy dress gauntlets out. I totally want to wear fancy dress. When I saw Excalibur at 10, I was like, I would like to wear armor at the dinner table.
Like, I'm thinking if people are willing to dye their hair multicolors, how is it all that crazy to wear something like a part of a gauntlet as part of your blazer or your jacket that you wear outside? Because I thought I'd love it if other people wanted to feel that way. I mean, before that, if people dyed their hair, that was crazy, right?
Yeah.
Or if you wore something that was, I don't know. I'm not all that interesting when I'm wearing all black all the time, but other people, they're much bolder with their choices. How is this any different?
I don't think it's that crazy because, I mean, at one point somebody looked at bell bottoms and said, oh, maybe people would like to wear these things. And it's just like they looked ridiculous, but they became this massive, I mean, but we're also heading into kind of a bit of a cyberpunk age. I mean, even now people are doing the asymmetrical makeup and whatnot to fool, what is it? Facial recognition
software,
and whatnot.
yeah.
And the thing is like, with what you're doing, I think that, I mean, you could actually, gauntlets or whatever it is, like with watches built in. Like I have a funny feeling we're going to be seeing a lot of that stuff soon. You're just at the forefront.
Well, and there's an aspect of what you're doing that feels very ornate and Victorian, almost a little bit of Art Nouveau to a certain extent, but also steampunk. There's a drifting towards steampunk. It's not steampunk. And germane to that is that I was in New Zealand doing some coverage for Tested on Mortal Engines, which is a new film coming out that Peter Jackson produced. And I got to watch the first, probably just under a half hour of the film. And it is fantastic how much they went towards steampunk, but not into it. They really invented a whole new world. And it's a world I swear you're going to absolutely love when you see it. Because again, it's adjacent to the idea of steampunk, but it's a totally different way of approaching it. I think you're doing something quite similar.
I mean, wouldn't that be kind of like what Game of Thrones did? They didn't throw in the magic in the first season, but it was like a very slow buildup of introducing this idea of fantasy to people who may not want to really get into fantasy.
Right. They weaned people on it.
But eventually, that magic, the dragons and everything, that all came out eventually. I didn't watch all the seasons, by the way, but that's
the gloves are just a beginning.
Oh, yeah.
So you're looking to continue making full suits of armor? Are you? I'm thinking the gorget, right? You're looking for a fashion.
Yeah, I mean something that if you really look at it, it looks like a collar necklace.
Yeah.
But the way it, how it clasps it locks in here on the side. And I was thinking, what if it was like a Mandarin collar?
Yeah.
But maybe something that overlaps back or the front. But the pauldrons, they could also sit on your shoulders, or maybe they can still look great as a whole upper piece on your shoulders or in your neck, but maybe you want to go light one day and you just want one side, but something that's not so crazy that it just draws too much attention, like just a little flare.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun. Just like wearing the whole gauntlet versus removing the gauntlet cuff and just wearing it like a little glove tucked into your jacket.
And to do that, to facilitate that, you've made little cufflinks to fill the rivet holes so that it looks complete. That attention to detail really pleases me.
And you can make
fun.
them very utilitarian as well. You know, like I have a set of her gauntlets, and I asked her if she could actually do them in kind of like a graphite gunmetal dark, and she's like, "Oh, but I have all these fancy colors," and I'm like, "Well, I'm a bit more understated, and it's like I like things that tend to be like a little bit on the darker side and whatnot." So, and she did those, and I can actually, I could actually see those kind of going under the radar a little bit more. You know, I do like the idea of wearing, like van braces and stuff like that, with leather jackets or whatnot, but not making, I prefer the non-showy stuff where it's like you have to look a little closer and it's like, are you wearing those aren't motorcycle gloves, Well,
there's some beautiful examples. I visited at an armor museum in London. I was there last November, about a year ago now. Yeah. And one of the things I love is on things like the gorgets, where it might be plain steel, but the hook that holds it together is super ornate with a little bit of a filigree, just really a little flare. And I can tell, I can see, we have a lot of crossover in our reference libraries for armor.
I got to, I picked up a lot more research that I have like 6 other books I need to buy when I get home after the stuff I learned in LA from some other enthusiasts, and it's endless. I mean, this is great, and I'm really happy with what I've produced, but there's still a long way to go.
Which period is it you focus on more than any others?
I really like 15th century Gothic armor. I love it because it is a little bit more flashy, and I love the fluting designs, and that's something that I thought matched my aesthetic the most, something that I can combine well. Whereas the other centuries, I like them too, but I can't say much about it because I honestly haven't explored it.
But specifically also more like parade armor.
Yes, parade armors are
like
wonderful.
coronation armor as opposed to fighting armor.
Yes, yes.
There's an amazing suit of Henry VIII's coronation armor when he was 18 that they have at the Tower of London. Yeah. It's
I've
really
only seen pictures from it.
You've got to see it in person. It's so incredible. It's just as the stuff you really are were showing at Comic-Con, it's fully enclosed. And so it's this rare occasion where historians know the precise size of Henry VIII's body when he was 18 years old because this armor was made to fit him for his coronation.
Yeah, he was very tall, wasn't he?
I can't remember.
I heard he was a very tall guy.
Very tall.
It's not one that has a giant cod piece on it, does it? Because she was showing me some. I was like, whoa, that looks like a cashew.
Yeah,
it was very cashew-like.
Yeah,
I only had one picture of it, and it was only because it was for laughs.
But it's just incredible. There's just so much detail put in it. I mean, I hadn't really appreciated it as an engineering thing up until she started talking about it, and I realized, because I'm like the kind of guy like RoboCop armor and stuff like that, but I always just thought, like that old armor was just a bunch of plates put together, kind of just loosely held on with straps and whatnot. I never really put a lot of attention into it, but you get access to, what is it, the Met?
I talked to I remember showing my gauntlets to the assistant arms and armor curator Sean Belair, and I was just like, hey, can you tell me if I'm doing something really wrong? And he wore it. He's like, this feels pretty good. I mean, of course, he still insisted on me seeing more blacksmiths and everything, but he wore it and everything. He mostly does a lot of restoring, but just be able to go in there and say, hey, I would still like to do more and see what else I could improve. But you've built gauntlets, but you also know how important that subtle curve, concave or convex curve, can drastically change the mobility of that piece.
It's amazing. And it's really important in order to understand this technology, to see and touch great examples of it. For instance, I have made gauntlets, but I didn't really understand how flexible a gauntlet could be until I received those Nazgul gauntlets that Crop Circle, the wonderful armor makers in Ontario, made me for my Ring Wraith costume. And I couldn't believe when I put that gauntlet on how much I put a sword in my hand and I had no restriction in my movement. And again, once you see that and you realize how well engineered these things were, you start to understand the possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at the community that's putting it together, I thought it was just your typical kind of like, we talk about the maker community all the time. And then I've always seen, the LARPers and the people who are with the SCA or whatever it is.
Society for Creative
But it's just
Anachronism.
like, what I realize is that it's just a world that is off on its own. They cross over every now and again. But now I'm just kind of like, what is, you get to talk to them all the time. What is that like environment like? Because within the replica prop community or whatever it is, there's
these guys-
personalities and whatnot.
Well,
are they
I've
open?
heard there's lots of fiefdoms in the
Yeah.
HEMA and
I
SCA
hear that
communities.
one of my friends who kind of goes into all those groups, she's like, I don't want to expose you to that. Keep your innocence. I'm like, all right, I'll just stay in my little room and just but yeah, I hear it's a lot of differing opinions.
But I really appreciate that that they seek specifically the reenactors
Yeah.
to replicate the functionality, the engineering until it is as functional as it should be. Because the way we've learned about armor from movies is totally wrong. Even all the fighting styles and the way that they use the armor, we have a completely warped idea of it. And the reality was much more utilitarian and much more usable than we think.
But that's why I think you'd love talking to someone like my friend Ian Laspina, the one who advised me on so much of the armor, when I was like, I don't know what it is, I don't know, but I can't rely on Google.
Right.
Who knows more than me, obviously? Who can fill in this gap that I need to admit, I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. And
The beginner's mind.
yeah. So when he was really, as a reenactor, he wants to understand how things were made as they were back in the day, right? And he is also, I believe, a full-time reenactor and armor educator, YouTuber. But when he broke it down for me, I was like, mind blown. I'm like, I know nothing. I know nothing at all. And that was, some people I guess might find that discouraging, but I just thought, well, now that I know this, what can I do with this?
Down the garden path you go.
Well, and I really appreciate that you're reaching out to different expertises because, as you said, Google doesn't know. And we keep on saying as a sort of cultural axiom that the internet is the sum of all knowledge. It's not. It's the index of the sum of all human knowledge. And it's actually somewhat of it's an index with some giant holes in it as well.
Like, don't rely on Wikipedia for everything, no.
And you're crossing over as well, because the stuff that you do, not only are you trying to be true to like original armor designs or whatever it is, you obviously have to stand on the shoulders of giants if you're going to do what you do, which is start from the Gothic stuff and then actually incorporate your own designs or whatever it is, but you want to be true to how it's originally constructed. But now you're also transitioning over to the maker community and using materials like the mold making and whatnot. And you've been in California for a couple of weeks now, about 2-3 weeks, and you got to meet like a bunch of makers in Los Angeles and also here, and obviously
And
the biggest luminary of them all is just to say,
I don't know if you're
slide the check over,
Is this okay? I just hit the microphone.
Don't worry about it.
But I don't know if you know this, but I told Mark the other day that I don't have a lot of maker or creative friends back in New York. So when Mark originally reached out for some other project, I realized I was like, when he was talking, I was like, he's like a maker person. Like, we can talk about stuff. And it was one of those moments where I thought, I didn't realize how alone I felt, because that's why I didn't know what I was doing, whether or not it was right or wrong. But I didn't know that I was missing a community for the few years that I've been doing it. I mean, I had the online community, but that's still different. I didn't have colleagues that say, hey, let's talk shop or just talk about materials. And it was just me and Google and just trying to understand what was good or bad information. And I guess looking back after being in California for the past 2-3 weeks, I was a lot more lonely than I thought. And when I met all these people who were like appreciating my work and sharing what their experiences were in making, I felt something I never felt. I know that sounds cheesy, but I didn't know. I didn't know that I was missing it up until this trip, and it's like tearing me up inside, because I'm like, I love you, New York, but
Oh, you're finding your people. It's funny when Mark and I get together, as we probably get together every couple of weeks or so,
around
something
there,
like that. I mean, a good half of our conversation is, have you heard about this new material? Have you seen this new paint marker? Have you tried this new chemical thing? I mean, it's like a download of all the stuff that we're obsessing about and trying to achieve in different ways. We work on different things. We do a lot of crossover. But that brain trust of being able to have people you can bounce stuff off of, show stuff in progress, and have them go, have you thought about this? You're right. It's invaluable.
Yeah, and you said that the first time on tech, you're like, oh, if you have questions on my materials, just ask me. I'm like,
yeah.
I can ask you.
Yeah, no problem.
No, but it's no one. I never had anyone where I could talk to about
welcome
that
to the
sort of
family.
So when he asked that, I was like, "Are you sure? Is this fine? This is fine."
It's fine.
And then when
I don't circle my wagons, like I just want and that's one of the big maker creeds. It's like, don't keep secrets.
Share your toys.
Share your toys. I mean, there are some things that you will hit that wall a little bit sometimes in the maker community where there's a specific something that you got from a production or whatever it is. Oh yeah, you can make one or two of these, but don't tell everybody. But by and large, when it comes to materials and techniques and whatnot, nobody owns any of that stuff. And somebody's going to figure it out eventually, and you're going to be left in the dust. Like they're going to figure something out really cool. Like everybody's like, oh, how do you chrome? There's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways of doing it. And, like if you can help somebody out or whatever it is and give them your technique and then they hit it somewhere else and they find something that's cheaper, easier to do it, they're going to give it back to you.
Well, and to go back to that wonderful Bill Hicks line that I love pointing out is he says about he talks to comedians about people stealing your jokes. And he said, if you think it's about the joke, you're not paying attention. You're the only one that has a monopoly on being you. And the more you make your comedy about you, the more nobody else can steal it. And this really applies to everything, really. You're making armor, and there's aspects of stuff you're doing that other people can grab, and then there's aspects that they'll never get close to because it's totally your aesthetic. And giving away the techniques and the ideas, it doesn't limit you, and it doesn't inhibit you. In fact, it does precisely the opposite. That's why, to me, I love sharing everything I have. It's totally vital.
And you saw I write massively long blog posts talking about where I found my research and my materials and like.
That's such a gift you give to the community by doing that.
I don't know if a lot of people read it or not, but it's there. It's always on my site. So when people are asking, I have the FAQ. I have long blog posts talking about what went into a project, and I try my best. But I guess the thing that I didn't have was like just to have a friend to say, hey, what about this technique? And when I started talking with you about that, it was like kind of mind blowing for me. I'm a late bloomer in many ways, like art and tech and all that, but I'm trying to catch up,
Well, I also appreciate your family. It seems very supportive.
Yeah, I mean, we do so much work together. Like you heard, Pianoverse, like the company, the music center it's my sisters and I, we built that together in memory of our grandmother. Like we do care a lot about, arts and stuff and just making sure that community feels at home. For the music center, we want people to feel warm and loved, feel like they're safe. In my art, I hope I can make them feel the same way. I'm not sure how, but I'm figuring that out.
Well, you're enveloped in the armor. You feel pretty safe.
I think so. Mark and Melissa, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I find both of your work really inspiring, and I'm really glad for our friendships. And I think that your story, Melissa, has a lot of universality to it and a lot of resonance with people watching because working under the restrictions that you've worked under and still attaining the quality and the level of exploration that you've done is really inspiring. So thanks.
You. And I admire you both so much. So, I mean, I'm learning so much. I continue to do so, and I'm glad I have amazing new people in my life.
Shucks.
Thanks, guys. We will see you next week. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening this week, and I want to thank the final sponsor that made this episode possible, and that's the All Turtles podcast. The All Turtles podcast is back for season 2 with new episodes about artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship, and tech. Through interviews with thought leaders and startup founders, the show will introduce you to people using AI to solve real problems in industries like healthcare, education, and art. Learn more about AI and entrepreneurship by tuning into the All Turtles podcast at allturtlespodcast.com or wherever you get your podcast feeds. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.